At my wife's funeral in Savannah, my mother-in-law didn't offer comfort. She gave an order. Stop crying. Pack your bags. Leave. I stood there in my black suit, my 9-year-old daughter shaking beside me, and realized this wasn't grief. It was a takeover. Within days, they tried to take my child, rewrite my name, and claim what my wife left behind, using rumors, paperwork, and family pressure like weapons. If you've ever been quietly pushed past your breaking point, tell me what it felt like for you. The first time I heard that sentence, it didn't come in a private room or a late-night phone call. It came at the graveside, while my wife's casket was still settling into the Georgia clay. My daughter Ava had my hand in a death grip. She was 9, small for her age, and her black dress kept sliding off one shoulder like it didn't belong on her body. I kept adjusting it without thinking. It was the only thing I could fix. People moved in clusters, offering soft words that didn't land anywhere. Someone pressed a paper cup of water into my palm. I didn't drink. The preacher had finished. The last hymn had faded. All that was left was the shuffling, the sniffles, and the quiet work of letting go. Denise Carter stepped forward like she owned the ground. She'd been standing near the front the whole time, arms folded, jaw set, watching me more than she watched the casket. Denise was my mother-in-law, and if you asked her, she was the only reason her daughter ever had anything worth having. Nia used to squeeze my knee under the table when Denise started in, her way of saying, let it go, keep the peace. Nia had that gift, making you believe peace was always possible if you just swallowed enough of yourself. I'd been swallowing for years. Denise waited until the last person tossed in their handful of dirt. Then she moved close enough that I could smell her perfume, sharp and expensive, like she'd dressed for a courtroom instead of a funeral. Ava shifted behind my leg. Denise didn't even look at her. She looked straight at me and said, stop crying. Pack your bags. Leave. It didn't register right away. My mind tried to file it under grief, under shock, under something that wasn't real. So I just stared. Her eyes didn't blink. No tremble in her voice. No softness. She said it again, slower this time, like she was explaining something to a man who didn't understand his place. Stop crying. Pack your bags. Leave. My throat tightened, but no sound came out. My face stayed still. The only thing that moved was my grip on Ava's hand. It went from holding to locking. I could hear dirt hitting wood. Thump, thump, thump. Denise leaned in another inch. You hear me, Malcolm? You don't belong here anymore. A man nearby, one of Denise's brothers, I think, shifted like he might step in, then decided not to. People like to watch drama when it isn't theirs. My chest hurt in a way that had nothing to do with tears. I wasn't sobbing. I wasn't falling apart. I'd cried plenty in the hospital when nobody could see me. I cried when Nia's oxygen numbers dropped. I cried when her hand went cold under mine. I cried when the doctor stopped using hopeful words. At the cemetery, I wasn't doing any of that. Still, Denise said it like I was putting on a show. Ava's fingers trembled in mine. Daddy, she whispered, barely a sound. That broke through. I didn't turn toward Denise. I didn't give her what she wanted. No argument, no pleading, no scene for her to tell later. Instead, I bent slightly and adjusted Ava's sleeve again. My voice came out low and steady. We're going to the car, baby. Denise scoffed. Good. Make it quick. I nodded once, not to her, but to myself. Then I started walking. Ava stayed close, her steps uneven in the grass. Behind us, I heard Denise talking to someone, already rewriting the story like she'd been waiting for the chance. At the edge of the cemetery lot, I stopped long enough to open the passenger door and lift Ava in, buckling her belt with hands that didn't shake. The motion felt familiar, like any other school morning, except it wasn't. I closed the door, walked around the car, and sat behind the wheel. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it. My eyes stayed forward, fixed on the road out, while my daughter stared at her lap. The engine turned over, smooth and obedient, and as I pulled away from the gravesite, a single thought pressed itself into the space Nia used to fill. Silence wasn't mercy anymore. It was permission. The highway out of Savannah stayed quiet, but my phone wouldn't stop vibrating in the console. Calls, missed calls, voicemails stacking up like bills. Denise, Troy, one of her cousins I barely knew. An unknown number from a Savannah area code that kept coming back every 10 minutes, like it had something to prove. I let every one of them ring out. Ava slept in the back seat with her forehead pressed against the window, her dress bunched up around her knees. Every so often she made a small sound. Not a sob, just a breath that caught. I kept the radio off. The silence felt safer than anyone's voice. I drove the speed limit, not because I cared about tickets, because speeding felt like panic, and panic never helped me keep control. Somewhere near Macon, I pulled into a gas station, filled the tank, grabbed a bottle of water and a packet of crackers for Ava. She didn't wake when I opened the door. I placed the crackers beside her, then sat back behind the wheel. The phone buzzed again, a text this time. You need to do the right thing. Don't make this harder. No name, no signature. I didn't have to guess. I deleted it and merged back onto the interstate. By the time the Atlanta skyline came into view, the sky was turning that washed-out gray that comes before dawn. I didn't head straight home. I couldn't. Home meant walking into rooms that still smelled like Nia's lotion, opening a closet and seeing her shoes lined up like she'd be back after work. Instead, I drove to Station 14. The bay doors were closed, but one of the rigs sat outside, freshly washed, the red paint dull under the streetlight. I parked and sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, trying to decide if I was about to fall apart or keep going. Ava stirred. "Are we home?" she asked, voice thick. "Almost," I said. "I just need to check something." She didn't argue. That's what scared me. Kids are supposed to push back. She was too tired for it. I walked her inside through the side entrance, signed my name in the log out of habit, and guided her to the small break room. The recliner in the corner had a clean blanket folded over the back. I laid it across her and watched her eyelids drop again like a switch shutting off. Then I stepped into the main bay. A couple of guys were already up, moving slow, drinking coffee, doing the quiet work that comes before a shift. Normally, they'd hit me with jokes the second I walked in. Someone would have asked about my week, my kid, my fantasy football lineup. This time, they just looked. Not cruel, not nosy, just different. Like they were measuring the space around me, trying to figure out how much weight it could hold. Anthony, one of the younger firefighters, opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then stopped. He glanced away and pretended to focus on the equipment check. That's when I knew. Something had already landed here before I did. Deshaun Price came out of his office with a travel mug in his hand. He was older than most of the crew, the kind of man who didn't waste words and didn't flinch when life got ugly. He took one look at my face and nodded toward the back door. "Come on," he said. Outside, the air had bite to it. Atlanta mornings in winter don't mess around. Deshaun leaned against the wall, crossed his arms, and watched me the way he watched smoke, calm, alert, waiting for it to shift. "You hear what they're saying?" he asked. "No," I said. "I haven't talked to anybody." He took a sip, then lowered the mug. "That's the problem. They're talking anyway." I didn't answer. My jaw tightened without permission. Deshaun tilted his head like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. "They're saying you walked out on the family, left her mama stranded, took your little girl and ran off like a thief." My stomach turned, not from guilt, but from the precision of it. Denise always knew how to pick the story that would stick. Deshaun's voice stayed flat. "They're writing your story for you, Malcolm." Something in my chest shifted. Not grief, not anger. More like a cold realization sliding into place. Inside, a tone sounded from the bay. Someone had flipped on the scanner. The day was starting whether I was ready or not. Deshaun pushed off the wall. "You got anywhere safe for Ava to be?" he asked, already pulling his phone out. I glanced toward the break room door, then back at him. "Yeah," I said, and reached into my pocket to finally check the missed calls. I drove straight from the station to my house once Deshaun confirmed what I already felt in my gut. Denise hadn't just insulted me at the cemetery. She'd started a campaign. Ava stayed with Deshaun's sister for the morning. She didn't ask questions. She just held her backpack with both hands and followed directions like a little soldier. That broke me more than tears would have. At home, I moved through the rooms on autopilot. Shoes off at the door, keys on the hook, jacket tossed over the back of a chair. I poured myself coffee I didn't want, stared at the microwave clock, then dumped it in the sink, untouched. The washer was already half full from the clothes we'd worn to Savannah. I didn't even remember tossing them in. My hands sorted black fabric, small socks, Ava's tights, my dress shirt. Everything smelled like the same day, like it had soaked into the threads. The suit jacket was last. I checked the pockets without thinking, habit from years of carrying gloves, pens, spare batteries for a flashlight. My fingers hit paper, not a receipt, not a tissue, something thicker. I pulled it out and unfolded it over the kitchen counter. The ink was smudged, like it had been copied too many times. Across the top, in clean courthouse font, it read, "Petition for temporary guardianship." My eyes went straight to the name, Denise Carter. Under relationship to minor, she'd written, maternal grandmother. Under reason for request, a few lines were typed, the kind of language people use when they want to sound official without saying the ugly part out loud. Concerns about stability, concerns about environment, concerns about emotional well-being. My throat tightened, but I didn't move. I just read it again, slower. A witness signature sat near the bottom. Not mine, not Nia's. Someone named Linda Parsons, with an address in Savannah. I didn't know her. The paper trembled slightly between my fingers. Not from fear, from that strange moment when your body tries to catch up to what your mind already understands. Denise had been planning this. Maybe not yesterday, maybe not even since Nia got sick. Maybe it had been brewing the whole time, sitting behind every comment about my job, every little jab about how their family did things. I stared at the form until the words blurred, then forced myself to breathe through my nose, slow and controlled. The same breathing I used in a burning building when everything inside wanted to rush. A thought slid in, quiet and sharp. Did Naya know? I hated myself for asking it. The question felt like betrayal. Naya was gone, and here I was wondering if she'd left something undone, something unsaid. But the paper was real. Denise's name was real. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through missed calls, not to return them, just to see the timestamps. Denise had called 6 times between midnight and 3 a.m. Troy had called twice. A cousin had texted, "Please talk to her, she's hurting." Hurting. Right. I tapped the school number. It rang 3 times before a woman answered. "Dr. Kingsley Elementary, this is Ms. Fowler." "Hi," I said. "This is Malcolm Reed, Ava Reed's father." Her tone softened immediately, like she'd recognized the name. "Oh, Mr. Reed, yes. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I said. "I'm calling because I need to confirm something. Has anyone contacted the school about Ava? About paperwork? A transfer?" There was a pause. Not long, but long enough for me to hear her deciding how careful she needed to be. "We did receive a call yesterday," she said slowly. "A woman asked about Ava's schedule and what documents would be needed if she were moving out of state." My grip tightened around the phone. "Did she give her name?" "Denise Carter," Ms. Fowler said. "She said she was Ava's grandmother." I closed my eyes for half a second. When I opened them, the kitchen looked the same, but everything in my chest felt rearranged. "Did you give her anything?" I asked. "No, sir," she said quickly. "We told her we couldn't discuss student information without the parent or legal guardian, but she was persistent. Persistent. That was one word for it." "Thank you for telling me," I said. "If she calls again, can you document it and let me know?" "Absolutely," Ms. Fowler replied. "Do you need to update your emergency contacts?" I looked down at the guardianship form on my counter. "Yes," I said, "today." After I hung up, I took a screenshot of the call log. Then another of the missed calls from Denise. I saved Ms. Fowler's name in my notes. I photographed the guardianship petition, front and back, and emailed it to myself with a subject line that said only, Ava. Then I opened my social media apps and deleted them from my home screen. Not to punish anyone, not to make a point. I just couldn't afford noise. The washer beeped, finishing its cycle. I stood there for a second, then picked up the wet clothes and started transferring them to the dryer, one piece at a time, like I was sorting evidence instead of laundry. The next morning started like routine. Lunch packed, Ava's folder checked. A hair tie found under the couch and looped around my wrist because she always lost them. I drove her to Dr. Kingsley, watched her walk in with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, and waited until she disappeared through the doors before pulling away. Work kept me busy enough to keep my mind from circling. Calls came in, small stuff, nothing major. A smoke alarm here, a fender bender there. I handled each one the way I always had, steady, controlled, professional. Still, every time my phone buzzed, my stomach tightened. Denise didn't call that morning. That should have been the first warning. I got to the school at 3 on the dot. Same spot in the pickup lane, same line of parents, same teachers guiding kids toward the right cars. I waved at Ms. Fowler through the glass. She gave me a quick nod and turned back toward the office. Then a man in a yellow safety vest stepped in front of my car before I could roll to the curb. He raised a hand, palm out. I eased down my window. "Sir, can I help you?" he asked. His tone wasn't rude. It was the kind of neutral voice people use when they've been instructed to keep things calm. "I'm here for Ava Reed," I said. "She's in 3rd grade." He glanced at a clipboard, then at me again. "Mr. Reed?" he asked. "Yes." He shifted his weight, and something in my chest tightened. "I'm sorry," he said. "We were told not to release her to you today." For a second, I didn't understand the words. My brain tried to rearrange them into something sensible. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I'm her father." He swallowed. "There's an authorization on file, a guardian authorization. The office has it." I looked past him toward the building. Kids streamed out. Parents opened doors. Teachers smiled like nothing in the world was wrong. "Where is she?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. That was the answer. My hands stayed on the steering wheel, but I could feel my fingers pressing too hard. I forced them to loosen one at a time. "She's already been picked up," he said finally. My mouth went dry. "By who?" He glanced toward the office again like he didn't want to say it out loud. "Her grandmother," he said. "Denise Carter." A sound came out of my throat, but it wasn't a word. More like air breaking. I put the car in park and stepped out. My legs moved on their own, fast but controlled, straight toward the front doors. The safety vest guy followed a few steps behind, talking into a radio. Inside, the office felt too quiet. Ms. Fowler looked up from behind the counter, and I could tell by her face she'd been dreading this moment. "Mr. Reed," she said softly. "Where is my daughter?" I asked. My voice stayed even. That was the only reason the room didn't spin. Ms. Fowler slid a folder across the counter. Inside was a one-page document, typed, signed, stamped by a notary. It listed Denise as temporary guardian, and included a section that said the school could release Ava to her. I scanned the page once, then again. The words blurred, not from tears, but from rage trying to turn my vision into heat. "This isn't a court order," I said. Ms. Fowler nodded quickly. We didn't realize," she whispered. She said she had legal authority. She was firm. She had the notary's stamp. I looked around the office. A couple of parents stood near the front, pretending not to listen while listening to everything. "Did Ava go willingly?" I asked. Ms. Fowler's eyes filled, and she shook her head slightly. She was confused. "She kept asking for you. Denise told her you were delayed and that she was taking her for ice cream." My stomach turned hard. The picture hit me so sharply, I almost lost my breath. Ava walking out with her backpack, looking back at the doors, waiting for me, and getting pulled away by someone she loved but didn't trust the same way. I leaned forward, closer to the counter. "What time did she leave?" Ms. Fowler checked the clock on the wall like she was hoping time could change. 2:56, she said. Less than 10 minutes before I arrived. I pulled out my phone and stepped away from the counter. The safety vest guy hovered near the door, nervous now. Ms. Fowler watched me like she wanted to help, but didn't know how. I dialed 911, not because I expected a siren to bring my child back in 5 minutes, because I needed a record, a timestamp, a paper trail that couldn't be twisted into a family misunderstanding later. The dispatcher answered, and I kept my voice level. "My name is Malcolm Reed," I said. "My daughter was taken from her school without my consent. I need an officer to meet me here." Across the office, Ms. Fowler covered her mouth with her hand. I stared at the guardianship paper again, at the fake calm of it, at the neat lines meant to make theft look like responsibility, and something cold settled behind my ribs. They didn't just cross a line, they walked right over it, like it was theirs. The officer at the school took my statement, copied the notary paper, and gave me a case number that didn't bring Ava back. He kept saying the same thing in different words. Without a court order, it was a civil matter, and Denise was claiming she had permission. He promised to call Savannah PD to do a welfare check. Promise didn't mean much to me that afternoon. I left the school parking lot with the windows down even though it was cold. I needed air to stay sharp. Sitting still felt dangerous. The credit union was 3 miles from my house, the same place Nia and I opened our first joint account after we got married. I parked, walked in, and took a number like it was any normal day. My hands stayed steady, but my thoughts ran tight and fast. A woman with dark hair pulled into a low bun, stepped out from behind the counter, and called my name before the screen even flashed. "Mr. Reed?" I followed her into a small office with a glass door. Her badge read, "Lila Hernandez, Member Services, Legal Support." She didn't offer condolences first. She didn't tilt her head or soften her voice. She looked at my face the way someone looks at a man who's already been hit and needs to decide if he's going to fall or stay standing. "You're here because someone is trying to move money," she said. It wasn't a question. I set the guardianship paper on her desk. "They took my daughter from school," I said, "and I think this is only the beginning." Lila glanced down, scanned the page once, then slid it back like it was contaminated. "You're being attacked with paperwork," she said. "That's what this is." I exhaled through my nose. "Can she do it?" I asked. "Can she freeze accounts? Take what's in there?" Lila shook her head, but she didn't do it kindly. "Not like she thinks," she said. "If you're the legal father and there's no court order, this doesn't override your rights. But people use forms like this to create confusion. They move fast, make a scene, and hope you panic." I didn't blink. "Then I need everything locked down," I said. She pulled up my profile, clicked through screens, and asked for ID. I handed it over. Her fingers moved quickly, practiced. "We can freeze the joint account temporarily," she said. "We can also change access, update passcodes, and flag unusual activity. But I need you to tell me what you think they're after." I stared at the monitor, at the numbers that suddenly looked like a target. "Life insurance," I said. "The house. Anything with Nia's name on it." Lila paused, then looked at me again. "Did you update beneficiaries?" she asked. I swallowed once. "Nia did," I said. "She told me. I saw the forms months ago." "Good," Lila said, "because I've seen families do ugly things when grief turns into entitlement." My phone buzzed. I didn't answer, but the screen lit up with a message from one of Nia's cousins. "He's unstable. Denise says he's not thinking straight. We're worried about Ava." I stared at it long enough to feel my jaw tighten, then set the phone face down. Lila noticed. "They're building a narrative," she said. "Don't feed it. Don't argue in text. Don't post anything. Let the record speak." I nodded once. "What do I do next?" I asked. She slid a form across the desk. "Sign this," she said, "and call your attorney. Today." My pen scratched across the paper, clean and firm. Outside the office, people chatted about car loans and holiday spending, like the world hadn't just shifted. When I finished, Lila stood and walked me to the door. "Mr. Reed," she said, stopping me with her voice. I turned. She didn't smile. She didn't pity me. "You're not crazy," she said. "You're just outnumbered. For now." My attorney's office sat above a coffee shop in Midtown, the kind of place with a clean lobby and a receptionist who spoke softly, even when the world was on fire. I didn't have time for soft. I walked in with a folder so thick it barely closed. Ava's birth certificate, my marriage license, Nia's death certificate, hospital paperwork, screenshots of missed calls, the guardianship petition, the school's release form with the notary stamp. Every piece of it felt heavy, not because of paper, but because it meant someone had been working while I was burying my wife. A man in a charcoal suit came out and shook my hand. "Malcolm Reed?" he asked. "Yes." "I'm Calvin Brooks," he said. "Come on back." His office smelled like toner and lemon cleaner. 2 chairs faced his desk. I didn't sit until he sat. Calvin opened his notebook. "Start from the beginning," he said. I didn't give him a story. I gave him facts, dates, times, names. The exact sentence Denise said at the graveside, the moment the school refused to release my child. The case number the officer gave me. The credit union freeze request. Calvin listened without interrupting, only lifting his pen now and then to underline something. When I finished, he held out his hand. "Let me see the paperwork," he said. I slid the folder across. He read in silence, then leaned back. "This is messy," he said. "It's theft," I replied. Calvin nodded once, like he respected the correction. "You're right," he said, "but we still have to handle it the way the court understands. Here's what we do today. We file an emergency petition in Fulton County for immediate custody and an objection to any guardianship request. We also request an order preventing your mother-in-law from removing Ava from Georgia." My jaw clenched. "She already tried," I said. "Then we document that," he answered. "Everything she does becomes part of the record." While he talked, I caught myself thinking about the last few years in flashes. Denise at our wedding, arguing with the florist because the roses weren't the right shade. Denise at the hospital, insisting on talking to the doctor alone. Denise calling me Malcolm when she was polite, and boy when she forgot herself. Back then, I kept telling Nia it was fine. I told her it didn't matter. I thought it was love coming out sideways. Sitting in that office, I finally named it control. Calvin pushed a set of forms toward me. "Sign here," he said, "and here." My phone buzzed again while I wrote. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A text came through right after. "Don't make this a war. You'll regret it." No name, no punctuation, just a threat wrapped in a suggestion. I showed Calvin. He didn't react like it was shocking. He just nodded and took a picture of the screen with his own phone. "Good," he said. "That helps." On the way out, I passed a window and saw my reflection. Same face I wore at work, the one that stayed steady when people screamed. But my eyes looked different, focused, not broken. That night, a dark sedan sat across the street from my house when I pulled into the driveway. It didn't have a reason to be there. No neighbor I knew drove that car. I went inside anyway, changed the locks with a kit from the hardware store, installed 2 cameras Deshawn dropped off without asking questions, checked that every window latched. Then I opened my laptop at the kitchen table, lined my documents up in neat digital folders, and started building a timeline Calvin could hand to a judge without raising his voice. The next morning my phone rang before I'd even finished tying my boots. I didn't recognize the number, but the area code was Atlanta, and in my line of work, unknown calls could mean anything. I answered on the second ring. "Mr. Reed?" a woman asked. Her voice was professional, careful. "Yes." "This is Karen Whitfield from Piedmont Hospital Medical Records. I'm calling because we received a request for copies of Ms. Nia Reed's treatment file." My stomach tightened. "Who requested it?" I asked. There was a pause, like she was checking what she was allowed to say. "Denise Carter," she replied. She identified herself as the patient's mother. I stood still in my hallway, keys in one hand, boots half-laced, my kitchen clock ticking loud enough to count the seconds between words. "Was the request approved?" I asked. "Not yet," Karen said quickly. "That's why I'm calling. She claims she had authority, but there's no medical power of attorney on file under her name. We wanted to confirm with the next of kin." Next of kin. That phrase hit harder than it should have, as if the world needed reminding that I was still attached to Nia, even after the funeral, even after Denise tried to erase me. "Do not release anything to her," I said. "Not a page, not a summary." "Understood," Karen replied. "We'll require a court order or proper documentation." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. When I hung up, I leaned against the wall for a second. Not because I was weak, because my body was trying to process what Denise was doing. She wasn't just trying to take Ava, she was trying to rewrite Nia's last year of life into something that served her. If Denise could pull the medical records, she could cherry-pick anything that sounded like stress, depression, anxiety. She could frame it like I caused it, like Nia suffered because of me, like I failed as a husband, so I didn't deserve to be a father. It was sick. It was also smart in the ugliest way. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Calvin. "Malcolm," he said, no greeting. "I need you to sit down." I moved to the kitchen without thinking, set my keys on the counter, and sank into the chair closest to the sink. The family photo sat on the windowsill above it. Nia in the middle, laughing. Ava missing a front tooth. Me holding them both like the world couldn't touch us. Calvin's voice stayed even. "Denise filed first," he said. "Chatham County, Savannah. She filed a petition for guardianship and emergency custody there yesterday afternoon." My grip tightened around the edge of the table. "How?" I asked. "On what grounds?" "Same language," Calvin said. "Stability, mental fitness, best interest of the child. It's boilerplate, but filing first gives her an argument about jurisdiction. I stared at the photo until my vision narrowed. Denise had been moving pieces while I was changing locks and uploading documents. She'd chosen Savannah for a reason. That court was her backyard, her friends, her church, her people. A simple lie travels faster when it starts at home. Calvin kept going. "We can challenge it," he said, "but I need you to sign additional affidavits today. I need a sworn statement about the school incident, about the threats, and about your fatherhood. We're going to file in Fulton and ask for an emergency hearing." The word emergency didn't feel dramatic. It felt accurate. "Send them," I said. My hand shook when I opened the email. Just a small tremor, like the aftershock of something bigger. I hated that it happened. I hated that Denise could reach me through paper and procedure and still make my body react. I printed the forms, signed my name on each line, initialed where they told me, read every paragraph twice. One line asked if I believed Denise posed a risk of removing Ava from the state. I didn't hesitate. Yes. The next asked if I believed Denise was acting in the child's best interest. My pen hovered for half a second. No. The ink looked too dark on the paper, like it meant more than words. Maybe it did. Maybe it was the first time I'd written down the truth without softening it for anyone. When I finished, I scanned everything and emailed it back. Calvin replied within minutes. "Got it. Stay available. Don't engage with them." I set my phone down and walked to the sink, turned on the water, and washed the coffee mug I hadn't used. Soap. Rinse. Dry. Simple movements, the kind that kept me from spiraling. Then I checked the front camera feed on my phone again. The dark sedan was back, parked across the street, engine off, sitting there like it had all day. I watched it for a moment, then picked up my keys and headed for the door. The call came while I was sitting in my truck outside Calvin's office, waiting for him to finish filing the emergency motion. My hands were on the wheel, but my mind kept drifting back to Savannah, Denise's face, the way she said those words like she was dismissing a waiter. The number on the screen was Piedmont Hospital again. I answered immediately. "Mr. Reed?" a woman asked. Her voice carried that tired steadiness people in hospitals develop. "Yes. This is Sharon Lewis," she said. "I'm the charge nurse from oncology. I took care of Nia. I'm sorry to call you out of nowhere." I sat up straighter. "It's okay," I said. "What's going on?" She hesitated, then exhaled. "Someone came in asking for Nia's records," Sharon said. "Not just the standard request. They wanted notes, staff observations, anything about family conflict. The name on the request was Denise Carter." I swallowed once. "They're trying to use it against me," I said. "I figured," Sharon replied, and there was no judgment in her tone, only recognition. "That's why I'm calling. There's something in Nia's chart you should know about." My grip tightened. "What is it?" "Nia asked us to document her wishes," Sharon said. "She was very clear. She wanted it in writing, signed, witnessed. She said if anything happened, she didn't want her mother making decisions for her, and she didn't want Ava removed from Atlanta." For a second I couldn't speak. Not because it was dramatic, because it was real. Because it sounded exactly like Nia, quiet, careful, always thinking 2 steps ahead when it came to Denise. "Do you have it?" I asked. "It's in the record," Sharon said. "We can provide it to your attorney as part of the official file. It's not a court order, but it's strong evidence of intent." I closed my eyes briefly and let that settle. Nia had been fighting her own battle and still found space to protect our daughter from a storm she knew would come. "Thank you," I said, voice rougher than I wanted. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," Sharon replied, "because I saw how your wife looked when her mother walked in, and I saw how she looked when you did." That landed like a weight in my chest, but it wasn't the kind that crushed. It was the kind that steadied. "I'll have Calvin contact you," I said. "I already left a note for records," she answered. "Tell him to request the patient directive and the staff note from March 12th. I repeated the date out loud to lock it in. "March 12th, I said. "Got it." After we hung up, I sat in the truck and stared at my phone, not scrolling, not calling anyone back, just thinking about my wife writing something down while she was still sick, still exhausted, still dealing with Denise's pressure. A text popped up a second later from a number I recognized. Troy, you're making Mom look bad. People are talking. Ava should be with family. I didn't respond. Another message came right behind it, from a cousin I'd never met in person. He needs help. He's not stable. Pray for him. Denise was working the crowd. Social media posts, group texts, church whispers, whatever she could use to paint me as a grieving man who couldn't be trusted. Troy was pushing from the side, trying to make it sound like concern instead of control. They had volume. They had familiarity. They had Savannah. What they didn't have was truth that held up under oath. I opened my notes app and typed, Sharon Lewis, charge nurse, patient directive, March 12th. Nia's wishes, no Denise, no relocation. Then I attached screenshots of Troy's messages and emailed them to Calvin. My finger hovered over the send button for half a breath, then tapped it. Inside the building, Calvin's office lights flickered as staff moved around. He was still filing, still pushing paper through the right channels. I put the phone down, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking space to go pick up Ava's backpack from the school office. The courthouse security line moved slow, but my mind stayed clear. Badge in my pocket, dress uniform pressed, shoes shined, not for show, for discipline. Denise sat 3 rows behind her attorney, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue like she'd been practicing in a mirror. Troy was beside her, jaw tight, eyes scanning the room as if he was looking for allies. When he spotted me, he leaned toward Denise and whispered something. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She could feel me there. Calvin met me near the front. "You good?" he asked under his breath. "I'm here," I said. That was the truth. I wasn't numb. I wasn't falling apart. I was present, and that mattered. The judge came in, everyone rose, and the room settled into that quiet where small sounds carry. A chair scraping, a cough, the click of a pen. Denise's attorney spoke first. He painted her as a grieving mother who had stepped up because her granddaughter was at risk. He said Denise had concerns about my emotional state after Nia's death. He used phrases like protective custody and best interest. He didn't say the word steal, but his story depended on it. Then Denise took the stand. She cried immediately, shoulders shaking, voice catching. "My daughter was everything," she said, "and now she's gone, and I'm terrified for my baby's baby." The judge listened, expression flat. Denise turned her head just enough to look at me. "Malcolm," she said, like my name tasted bitter. "He's not right. He's angry. He kept Nia stressed. She told me she was scared." My stomach tightened, but I didn't react. Not a blink, not a shift. Denise kept going, gathering momentum. "He isolates Ava. He doesn't let her talk to us. He's controlling. He's emotionally abusive. Nia suffered because of it." There it was. The story she'd been building with medical records, with gossip, with those late-night calls. A few people in the room shifted. I felt eyes on me, curious, judging, hungry. Calvin stood when it was our turn. He didn't start with emotion. He started with a folder. "Your Honor," he said, "we have documentation that the petitioner attempted to obtain medical records without proper authority, contacted the minor's school to arrange an out-of-state transfer, and removed the child from school using a notarized form that is not a court order." Denise's attorney objected. The judge lifted a hand. "Overruled," she said. "Proceed." Calvin handed the clerk a packet, then another. He laid out the call logs from the school, the case number from Atlanta PD, the screenshots of Troy's texts, the anonymous threat, Sharon Lewis's note from the hospital, Nia's written directive stating she did not want Denise involved in medical decisions and did not want Ava removed from Atlanta. Denise's crying slowed. Her tissue paused mid-air. Calvin's voice stayed steady. "And finally," he said, "we have evidence the petitioner attempted to access funds from a life insurance policy for which she is not the beneficiary." Denise jerked her head toward him. "That's a lie," she snapped, the grief slipping off her face for a second. Calvin didn't argue. He held up the credit union record request and the flagged activity report, signed and dated. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Ms. Carter," she said, "did you attempt to withdraw funds from your daughter's life insurance policy?" Denise's mouth opened, then closed. Troy leaned toward her again, whispering fast. She shook her head too quickly. I was trying to help, she stammered. Funeral costs, the family. The judge raised a hand. That is not what I asked, she said. Silence settled hard. The judge looked down at the papers, then at me. Mr. Reed, she said, are you Ava's legal father? Yes, ma'am, I answered. Do you have any criminal history, active warrants, or documented incidents of abuse? No, ma'am. She nodded once, then turned back to Denise. This court is issuing an immediate order returning the child to her father, she said. And I am warning you right now, any further interference will result in sanctions and potentially criminal referral. Denise's face tightened, the tissue crumpling in her fist. The judge's gavel tapped once. We're done here, she said. Calvin touched my elbow. Let's go, he murmured. I stood, buttoned my jacket without rushing, and walked out without looking back, already dialing the number for the Savannah officer escort listed on the court order. Savannah PD met me outside Denise's house the next afternoon. 2 officers stood on the porch while I waited at the curb, court order folded in my jacket pocket like something sacred. My hands stayed calm on the steering wheel, but my stomach felt tight, the way it does when you know the door you're walking through might change everything. Denise opened the door like she was still in charge. Her eyes went straight to me, then flicked to the officers, and I watched her calculate how to look wounded instead of caught. This is unnecessary, she said. One of the officers kept his voice polite. Ma'am, we're here to ensure the child is returned to her father per court order. Denise's mouth tightened. She's napping, she said. She's been through enough. The officer didn't move. Please wake her. Denise turned and disappeared inside. Troy stepped into view a second later, leaning against the doorframe like he wanted to block the whole world with his body. You happy now? He asked. I didn't answer him. My eyes stayed on the hallway behind him, waiting for a small face to appear. A minute later, Ava walked out with her backpack on, and her hair pulled back the way Denise liked it, not the way Ava liked it. She looked at the officers first, then at me, and her whole body loosened like she'd been holding herself tight for too long. She didn't cry. She ran. Her arms wrapped around my waist so hard I felt it in my ribs. She pressed her face into my jacket and took one deep breath, then another, like she was making sure I was real. I knelt and held her back, one hand on her shoulder blade, the other gripping the strap of her backpack so it wouldn't slide. You okay? I asked softly. She nodded against me. I didn't like it there, she whispered. She kept saying you didn't want me. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. I always want you, I said. Denise stood behind the officers, arms crossed again, the same posture she wore at the cemetery. Except now she had nowhere to push me. The court order took up all the space. One of the officers asked her to sign a form acknowledging the handoff. Denise hesitated. This isn't over, she muttered. The officer didn't look impressed. Actually, ma'am, it is, he said. You've been warned. I buckled Ava into the passenger seat and handed her the water bottle I'd brought. She took a sip without taking her eyes off the house. I didn't rush her. I just climbed in and pulled away. On the drive back to Atlanta, Calvin called to update me. Denise's petition had been dismissed. The judge had ordered her to cease contact with the school and barred her from requesting medical records. Troy's notary paper was flagged, and an investigator was looking into how it got stamped without court authority. Denise had wanted to control the story. Now the record controlled her. A week later, Ava and I walked through Piedmont Park with paper cups of hot chocolate warming our hands. She talked about school like she was trying to stitch herself back together. I listened, answering when she asked, letting her set the pace. My phone buzzed. A message from Denise. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Please let me see my granddaughter. I stared at it for a second. No anger. No satisfaction. Just clarity. The screen went dark when I hit the power button, and I slid the phone into my pocket without replying. Ava tugged my sleeve. Can we go see the ducks? She asked. Yeah, I said, and we kept walking.